And I like the story of Yvonne Ridley when she became Muslim, when she was in Afghanistan, the British reporter. And obviously she had a lot of misconceptions about Islam. And when she was caught as a prisoner of war at the beginning of the war in Afghanistan, when the Taliban put her into jail, she's thinking obviously the worst. These guys, these big beards and this. So at the end they said, we're going to let you go. But we're going to let you go under one condition. And she said, what is this that you read? They said, you read the Quran. And because what they looked into, they found she wasn't a spy or anything. She was a regular reporter. They said, we'll let you go. But the condition is that you read the Quran. So she said, subhanAllah, when she came back to England, and she said, I've always been a person of my word. So I'm going to read the Quran as I promised them. And the first thing she said I want to read was about women's rights. So she goes to the index, you know, the woman that she's to be kept into a dungeon. She's supposed to be chained into her house. She's supposed to walk 5 steps behind her husband. This is what she's thinking she's going to find, these type of things. So she found the contrary, and she found how Islam focused on the women, and it changed her views. And this is what guided her to Islam, subhanAllah.
There were many things in the Quran which really took my breath away, not least the treatment of women. And the Quran makes it crystal clear that women are equal in spirituality, worth, and education. But it wasn't a rushed decision I made. I embraced Islam more than about 2 years after the Taliban experience. People say again, you know, oh, she took on the faith of her captors. It wasn't like that at all.
You see, for over 1,200 years, Muslim women had it much better than their Western counterparts in terms of rights. Much better. In terms of marriage and divorce, in terms of money, in terms of transactions, in terms of freedom. A lot of things the Muslim women had it, which their Western counterparts did not have. And you all know, this is the stereotypical, you know, things that all of you know. You all know women over here were not, you know, the properties of their husbands completely. And, you know, in the past, they were even inherited, like people inherited money. They didn't have the rights to control property. Even as recent as 18-something, 50 or something, women could not technically own land in certain European countries. Now, obviously, the Muslim Ummah from day one gave them this rights. So for 1,200 years, there was no room for the West to criticize Islam. Their women were behind what the Muslim women were.
The Quran intended to eradicate many negative practices and attitudes towards women, and did so in explicit terms.
Is the Sharia inhumane to women? Firstly, in Islam, men and women are viewed as fundamentally equal. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I do not waste the deed of any doer among you, be they male or female, the one of you is as the other. Secondly, as individuals, Islam gave women the right to own property when they had no right. And it was only recently, I think, within the last century, that women in this country had the right to own property. The second thing, women have the right to keep her property after marriage and not give the husband any of it. They have the right to be given a marriage gift, usually a considerable sum of money in some cases, and if divorced, they have to receive alimony. Women have the right to vote. The Prophet Muhammad requested the Pledge of Allegiance for his leadership from women and was not only satisfied to receive it from men. Women have the right to work and own a business. The Prophet's wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, was a successful businesswoman.
Over 1,400 years ago, it was ordered that women be educated. It was ordered that all members of society be educated. And a prisoner of war could gain their freedom by teaching a Muslim to read and write. That's all that was necessary. This is how important education was considered.
Are Muslim women allowed to go and seek Islamic knowledge? They're allowed to go and seek Islamic knowledge as well as academic knowledge. We know that almost a quarter of the religion, Islamic law, was conveyed to us by Aisha, the third wife of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. She was the fourth most prolific narrator of hadiths. Many studied under her, and there were many of those who taught, leading scholars, Imam Malik and others. Their teachers were women. So this is history, Islamic history.
A woman cannot be married without her consent. under any circumstances.
A woman has the right to choose who she wants to get married to. She cannot be forced, nor can she be compelled to get married to a person who is not compatible with her, a man who she is not attracted by. Even if the people try to force her, if you are a woman who's watching this program and your culture is one that says you have to obey your mother or your father or the elders from your community, and you think that that's the religion, I'm telling you right now that there was on a number of examples and occasions during the time of Rasulullah when people were trying to force their daughters to marry someone else, to marry someone. And that lady would go to Rasulullah and say, Ya Messenger of Allah, they're trying to force me to marry my cousin or force me to marry this person. The Prophet ﷺ would say to that girl, no, you have a right to marry the person who you want to marry. Similar to that is, she can initiate the divorce in Islam. There's a religion in Catholicism, for an example, that the people believe once a person is married, you cannot rent asunder what Allah put together. So you are married for life. But the person could have made a mistake. He chose the wrong person to marry. In Islam, the woman can initiate the divorce. If her husband is a drunkard, if her husband is an abusive husband, if her husband is not productive, he doesn't maintain her, he doesn't provide for her, he doesn't protect her, she has a right to go to the Islamic judge and to seek what is known as a khula, and that is when the woman initiates the divorce. Islam put that right in her hand.
The Quran says, and among his signs is this, that he created for you wives from amongst yourselves, that ye may find repose in them. And he has put between you affection and mercy. Verily, in that are indeed signs for people who reflect. So the basis for marriage is affection and mercy. In a hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ ordered men, not one of you should fall upon his wife like an animal. But let there be first a messenger between you. And they asked, what is that messenger? And he replied, it is kisses and words. So don't just attack, so to speak, your wife sexually like an animal, but rather approach her with romance and gentleness. In fact, even the children of women in Islam are told to respect their mothers more than their fathers. A person came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and asked, who amongst the people is most deserving of my fine treatment? He responded, your mother. And then he asked, and then who? And the Prophet said, your mother. Again, and then who? Your mother. And then who? Then your father. So women are held in very high esteem in Islam. And I think a confusion arises regarding the issue of equality, because in liberalism it's assumed that if you're equal, then the law should treat you absolutely the same. But liberalism doesn't even follow, it's not even consistent on that. Because if someone is handicapped or disabled, they have extra privileges to compensate for them being handicapped or disabled, which the law gives them, disabled people, which you don't get. So the law treats people who are different differently, even in liberalism. Yet when Islam does so, it is reviled as being unequal and rendering women as second-class citizens. Islam is functionalist in basically, if you have different abilities, then you have different responsibilities. So if you can give birth to a child, then you have different responsibility to a man who can't give birth to a child and doesn't have to carry a child inside him for 9 months and bear the pains of birth and child rearing. So Islam recognizes that the difference between men and women, I know it sounds obvious, but it is the case. And the basic social unit in Islam is the family. In liberalism, it's the individual. And herein lies the problem. And in communism, it's society. Society is just one whole. But we're not discussing communism here today. In Islam, the basic reproductive unit and first support mechanism is the family. Individuals are born into a family, not the other way around. If society doesn't help you, your family will. Therefore, the family has to be the bedrock of society. So the family structure is organized like this. Men, who nature has made physically stronger, taller and bigger, are the maintainers and protectors of women. In the Quran it says, and women shall have rights similar to the rights against them according to what is equitable. But men have a degree of responsibility over them, and Allah is exalted in power and wise. It's funny because in nature, what we see in nature is if different animals, if there's difference in the gender, for example, let's say ants, for example. Ants, the queen, obviously she is the basis of the entire nest. But you then have specialized worker ants and specialized soldier ants. And these ants have to do special tasks because the soldier ant has bigger claw mandibles, so he can obviously attack threats and dangers. And the workers, obviously, they work and they can't reproduce in most species of ants. So they all rely on the queen to be the basis of the nest. So is ant society unequal? Should we be campaigning for ant rights? No, this is how nature organizes creatures. And we are creatures, we are part of nature. So why can't we admit the functionalism in our own species? In Islam and in the natural world, functional specialization, as I said, does not mean inequality. It means that what is different amongst us be used to best help others. So, men are physically stronger, have high endurance for physical work, and can run 10% faster. Women are not able to achieve the same sporting records that men achieve in like-for-like activities. Men are specialized for competition, physical work, and fighting. For us, Islam seems to employ men solely to defend, maintain, perpetuate, and improve the living conditions of women.
Brothers and sisters, dear guests, the male is not like the female. Science tells us, reason tells us, experience tells us, and Allah reminds us. Men and women are different. So it is the society that oppresses women is a society that takes women away from their nature. A society that tells women that being a mother, that being the housekeeper, that the one who is doing perhaps one of the most essential jobs in society is a degrading position. They talk about it. She's chained to the kitchen sink, like she's some slave, like it's some menial task. And rather the woman who is honored is what? The actress, the model, the super businesswoman. And the more clothes she takes off, the more honored she is. This is the woman they honor in this society. And anyone who stays at home, looking after the children, oh, look at that poor little thing. Look at her. Oh, yes, you know what I'm talking about. In fact, what we find is that Western society is the society that oppresses women. Because the nature of the woman is to be a mother. The nature of the woman is to be caring for children. The nature of the woman, her whole biology, her whole chemistry, her nervous system, her mental system is all constructed. Whether you believe in Allah or you believe in evolution, it's not something you can argue about. Either Allah has created women like that, or evolution over millions of years has made women like that. To be the ones that bear the children, that carry them, that give birth to them, that feed them, that care for them, that nurture them. And believe me, the one who is most capable of doing it is the woman. The man can have a go, and maybe he has to do that sometimes. But the reality is, as every single one of us who have got kids here, we know the reality. And believe me, they have sown the seeds of their own destruction. They have sown the seeds of their own destruction. And you see it. Because who is looking after the kids? Who gives the kids the love and the care and the attention that they need? Who is there to teach the kids the morality, right from wrong, manners? You know who it is? MTV. PlayStation. Because mummy is out working along with daddy. Huh? And who else is looking after the children? Who is looking after them? Can anyone look after a child like the mother? No. And so you find children coming with no morals, no concept of right and wrong. Violence, sex, drugs, music, fantasy is the norm for them. That is the norm for them. And love, they haven't found love in the home. So what do? They join gangs. That's what they do. They join gangs. They look for it somewhere. If they can't find it in the home, they'll try to find somewhere to belong. It's happening in America. It happens in England. I'm sure it happens here in Australia. Kids on the street doing all sorts of things. Why? Because there was no one who nurtured them. They are sowing the seeds of their own destruction. They have already done it. And now they are reaping the evil rewards of their evil philosophy and their injustice and their tyranny. And they blame us. And they point the finger at us. They point the finger at Islam.
Now we say we don't give women their rights. Wallahi, you cannot find women anywhere in the world who are more spoiled than Muslim women. Because Muslim women in Islam, they don't have to work. They don't have to work. I'm not saying they can't work. If they want to work, it's an agreement between the husband and the wife, that's something else. But they do not have to work. And if she works, the husband has no right to her money. No right whatsoever. Not even a percentage of it. So now if she works, for example, if she's a doctor and he's an engineer, for example, and she makes 50,000 dirhams a month and he makes 10,000 dirhams, he cannot have 1 dirham of her money. Not even the 25 fils, the smallest one here, he can't even have that. Unless she gives it to him. She gives it as something else. But he has no right to any of her money. On top of that, he has to pay the rent, pay the bills, get the food, all of that, and she has 50,000 in her bank account each month to do what she wants to do with it.
So in essence, us guys, we are literally the worker and soldier ants, and our whole life actually orbits around the women of our families. And that's basically what the purpose of men. It's just basically to provide for and take care and look after women. Some could say that Islam is unfair on men now. And maybe in my next talk, I have to call for men's rights in Islam. In the West, the concept of equality is for women to resemble what a man considers to be successful, i.e. having a high-flying career.
So basically, in American society, we're expected to have 2 jobs. We're expected to work in the workforce like a man, and we're expected to have a home life with children and take care of a husband and all that. And I think the real misconception here is they think that this feminism is liberating when it's really not. It's oppressive.
The reality of it, the reasons for their promoting this feminism, as I said, is much more mundane. It's actually mostly to do with economics. They theorize that if you have half the population of your country staying at home, not being employed, then what you have done is you have not utilized half the economic potential of your society. In other words, if the only ones who are working are men, then men are the ones who work, men are the ones who control the money, and men are the ones who essentially will spend the money. If we get the women working, that means we will have more disposable income, more people buying, more people spending, and our economy will increase. This is what they imagined.
I sold all my stock for $300,000. That's all I own. I sold my apartment in New York. I'm using rough money, Dick. And I had $100,000.
It's about money, Dick. It's about money! It's about money, Dick! It's about money! Dick! Money!
And it seems to make some sort of sense, doesn't it? If we look at the origins of this, it started in the First World War. In the First World War, when lots of men were going out and getting slaughtered in their millions, in the battlefields in France, and also in the Second World War, the women were forced to go to the factories to produce munitions. And then they got a taste of liberation. And once they got a taste of liberation, as they called it, and they started having their own incomes, they didn't want to go back to the old ways of being chained to the kitchen sink, as they called it. And it seemed that for a time it was working. Wealth increased, expenditure increased, the economy went forward. But now, amazingly, economists have come across a new reality that they've only just woken up to quite recently. This is quite interesting. They've realized that once a certain percentage of your population reaches over 65, and in fact it's around 30%. So, if 30% of your population is over 65 years old, what they discovered is the economy of your country becomes not viable anymore. In other words, the economy won't work. Why? Because the money you need to spend to care for the over 65s is more than the money that those people who are earning and working can generate. And it's nothing to do with they care about old people. Now they want to introduce new laws to let people work till they're 75. It's nothing to do with their caring about old people. They've started to realize that they're getting an increasing aging population and they're not going to be able to sustain the economy. And now, having told women that you should leave the home, liberate yourself from your husband, liberate yourself from that kitchen sink. What do you want to have kids for anyway? Waste your time with that. Go out and earn some money. Now they're trying to get them to get back in the home, back to the kitchen sink and having babies again. Because there's not enough young people in society. And of course, what is this proving is the complete nonsense of those people who try to live their lives according to the feeble opinions and ideologies imagined in the minds of human beings. And when they abandon the perfect guidance of Allah, they will only end up destroying themselves.
The one who created us in the first place, we call him Allah, you might call him God. The point is, he's the creator and the sustainer of the universe. He, more than anyone else, should know what he created. And he should be the one responsible to tell us how to deal with his creation.
It is from the one who created the universe. Islam is from Allah. It is from God. It is from the Creator. And He knows us better than we know ourselves. He is closer to us in His knowledge than our jugular vein. He is intimate in His knowledge with every single detail of our existence. Allah, He is Al-Latif. He is the one who is aware of every single subtlety.